The turbulent and often unpredictable career of former UFC middleweight champion Sean Strickland appears to have found its next coordinates, with a pivotal bout reportedly in the works that could either re-establish him as a top title contender or signal a dramatic fall from the division's upper echelon. According to sources on social media, Strickland is being lined up to face the surging and notoriously relentless Anthony Hernandez at UFC 325 on January 31st in Australia. This matchup represents a classic stylistic clash between a seasoned, high-volume striker and a younger, suffocating grappler, and for Strickland, it is a perilous path to redemption. After his stunning title victory over Israel Adesanya was followed by two tightly contested losses to Dricus du Plessis, Strickland managed to right the ship with a solid decision win over Paulo Costa. A fight against Hernandez, however, is an entirely different kind of challenge, one that bypasses the star-powered names for a grim, grinding battle against a man who has become the division's premier submission artist and pressure wrestler. Anthony "Fluffy" Hernandez enters this potential showdown as one of the hottest fighters in the entire UFC, riding a formidable 8-fight winning streak that has seen him systematically break and submit a series of formidable opponents, most recently choking out Roman Dolidze. His style is a nightmare for anyone who struggles with cardio and grappling pressure. He pushes a pace that is unsustainable for most, drowning his foes in a constant stream of takedown attempts, clinch work, and ground and pound until an opening for his vicious jiu-jitsu appears. For Strickland, whose key to victory lies in maintaining range, implementing his high-output boxing, and showcasing his own underrated defensive wrestling, this fight is a direct test of his core competencies. The narrative surrounding Strickland has always included his toughness and his ability to stuff takedowns and force opponents into a stand-up battle, but Hernandez represents the most persistent and dogged grappler he has faced since his battles with du Plessis. Interestingly, this booking comes at a time when Strickland's name is being floated by insiders, like former champion Luke Rockhold, as the toughest possible stylistic test for the new boogeyman of the division, the undefeated Khamzat Chimaev. Rockhold pointed to Strickland's annoying ability to get back to his feet, a skill he personally experienced in training, as the key factor that could trouble a dominant wrestler like Chimaev. This potential future blockbuster, however, is entirely contingent on Strickland navigating the immense threat that Anthony Hernandez presents. A victory over Fluffy would be a monumental statement, proving Strickland can handle the next generation of grinding contenders and instantly reinserting him into the championship conversation. A loss, however, would mark his third defeat in 4 fights and could see him plummet down the rankings, making the UFC 325 showdown nothing less than a career crossroads for the outspoken former champion. The brutal and often unforgiving nature of the UFC's roster management has once again been thrust into the spotlight, with emerging reports indicating that Polish heavyweight Merrick Bulo has been released from the promotion after a solitary and largely panned performance in his debut at UFC Qatar. This decision, if confirmed, underscores the steep challenge fighters on the preliminary cards face, where a single lackluster outing can outweigh an otherwise perfect professional record. Bulo entered the octagon in Doha with an unblemished 6-0 record, with every victory coming by first-round finish, suggesting a fighter with explosive potential. However, his 3-round unanimous decision loss to fellow debutant Denzel Freeman was widely criticized by fans for its slow pace and lack of action, standing in stark contrast to the thrilling finishes delivered by other newcomers like Abdul Rahman Yakhyayev and Luke Riley on the same card. The situation was compounded by Bulo's subsequent decision, as reported by sources like Adrian Szymanski citing the fighter's manager, to turn down a short-notice opportunity to redeem himself on the upcoming UFC 324 card in January. In the high-stakes world of the UFC, where roster spots are precious and inactivity is often frowned upon, refusing a quick turnaround, even for a valid reason like needing more time to recover, can be a critical misstep. This combination of a disappointing debut and an unwillingness to immediately get back on the horse appears to have sealed his fate. The news prompted Bulo himself to take to social media to express his confusion and frustration, questioning the logic behind his purported release. Getting fired after one worse, bad fight, lost by decision, he wrote on X. Who came up with such an idea? Has this ever happened before? After all, fighters lose their debuts in a dozen seconds and keep fighting. The fight was boring and conservative, but after all, contracts aren't for one fight. His plea highlights a harsh reality of the modern UFC. While contracts may be for multiple fights, the promotion almost always retains the right to cut a fighter after any bout. His argument that fighters have been kept on after more decisive losses is valid. However, the UFC's calculus often weighs entertainment value and fan reaction just as heavily as the official result. A thrilling knockout loss can sometimes be more valuable to a fighter's job security than a grinding, uneventful decision victory. For Merrick Bulo, the perfect record he built on the regional scene was not enough to protect him from the cold, hard business decision that follows a performance deemed forgettable, serving as a stark reminder to every contender that in the UFC, how you win or lose can be just as important as the outcome itself. The competitive crucible of the UFC's welterweight division has forced a moment of serious introspection for contender Sean Brady, who is now openly considering a drop-down to 155-pound lightweight class in the wake of his disappointing loss to the surging Michael Morales at UFC 332. This setback, a first-round stoppage that halted the significant momentum he had built with a dominant victory over former champion Leon Edwards, has prompted Brady to reevaluate his place in the MMA landscape. The welterweight division is currently a minefield of elite talent, a fact Brady is acutely aware of. Beyond the reigning champion Islam Makhachev, the top of the weight class is crowded with dangerous and active contenders like Ian Machado Gary, the undefeated Shavkat Rakhmonov, the explosive Carlos Petraeus, and the very man who just defeated him, Michael Morales. This logjam of killers makes the path back to title contention at 170 pounds a long and arduous one, leading Brady to look for a potentially clearer route in a different weight class. In a recent interview, Brady confirmed the speculation, stating plainly, "I might try to go to 155 pounds." He elaborated on the strategic thinking behind the potential move, noting there's a lot of good-ass matchups at 155 pounds, but also depends on what they want to give me at 170 pounds. This comment reveals a fighter weighing his options, balancing the appeal of fresh, stylistically intriguing fights in a new division against the opportunities the UFC might still present to him at welterweight. From a physical and stylistic standpoint, the move could be a shrewd one for Brady. He possesses a formidable wrestling base and high-level jiu-jitsu, skills that could be even more potent against generally smaller opponents at lightweight. Furthermore, at this stage in his career, he is likely still able to make the cut to 155 pounds without it being a debilitating process. While the lightweight division is itself stacked with talent, the specific path to the top might appear more navigable to Brady than the gauntlet he would have to run again at welterweight. For a proud warrior like Sean Brady, this isn't about running from a challenge, but about making a calculated strategic decision to maximize his chances of ultimately capturing the UFC gold that remains his ultimate goal. The UFC landscape is currently gripped by a whirlwind of speculation and strategic intrigue, all swirling around the enigmatic figure of Ilia Topuria, the reigning lightweight champion whose career trajectory appears to be taking a path so unconventional it has left the entire fighting world struggling to anticipate his next move. The epicenter of this storm is a series of reports from journalist Alvaro Colmenero, which suggest that Topuria will not only bypass the expected January and February slots for his first title defense, but is potentially considering the nuclear option of vacating the 155-pound championship entirely, with a return to action not planned until the spring of 2026.
This is not merely a delay, it is a potential abdication, a move that would send seismic shocks through the foundations of the lightweight division and mark the second time Topuria has voluntarily relinquished a UFC title, having previously left the featherweight throne behind after his spectacular knockout of Max Holloway. The situation is shrouded in deliberate mystery, amplified by Colmenaro's cryptic hint that things have changed a lot. There have been private situations, and you're going to be very surprised at what's going to happen in lightweight. This carefully worded tease has transformed the lightweight title from a symbol of supremacy into a piece on a global chessboard, with Topuria and his team seemingly playing a long game that prioritizes legacy-defining super fights over the traditional responsibilities of a champion. This potential seismic shift is the latest evolution in a complex and protracted Cold War between Topuria and the current welterweight champion and pound-for-pound king, Islam Makhachev. Their intertwined destinies have been a source of endless fascination. The original blueprint seemed clear, a champion versus champion clash for the lightweight belt. However, the script was flipped when Makhachev, in a stunning power move, ascended to welterweight, captured a second title by dethroning Jacques Della Maddalena, and in the process stripped Topuria of the coveted pound-for-pound crown. Topuria, now holding the lightweight belt Makhachev vacated, found himself in a paradoxical position, a champion whose primary goal was to fight a man who no longer resided in his division. This has led to Topuria publicly floating an idea so ambitious it borders on revolutionary: the creation of a one-off, symbolic pound-for-pound title to be contested at a catchweight. This proposed bout exists outside the rigid structures of weight classes and rankings. It is a fight conceived purely for historical primacy, a clash to determine the true alpha of the sport without the complication of a divisional title being on the line. It is a concept that underscores Topuria's perception of his own value and legacy, suggesting that a standard title defense against a leading contender like Arman Tsarukyan or a popular name like Paddy Pimblett is simply not a big enough stage for his ambitions.
In a sport often defined by carefully curated personas and diplomatic soundbites, UFC bantamweight champion Merab Dvalishvili continues to be a refreshing and brutally honest force of nature. Fresh off an unprecedented 3 title defenses in a single year, the machine is not slowing down, with his sights set on a 4th defense against Peter Yan at UFC 323 and ambitious plans for 2026 that include a coveted spot on the historic White House card. His recent appearance on the Pound for Pound podcast with Henry Cejudo and Kamaru Usman provided a raw look into the deep-seated motivations that fuel his relentless pace, revealing that, for him, these fights are about far more than just gold or glory. They are deeply personal battles rooted in national pride and historical conflict. Dvalishvili's upcoming rematch with Peter Yan is laden with a geopolitical significance that transcends typical sports rivalry. For the Georgian champion, this is not merely a fight, it is a proxy for a much larger struggle. He's from Russia, I'm from Georgia. Every time we have a competition against the Russians, we have to win, Dvalishvili stated, framing the contest in stark nationalistic terms. This sentiment is not new. He has previously expressed the immense personal and national pressure he feels in such matchups, once telling Daniel Cormier in a chillingly candid moment, "I don't like Peter Yan. He's Russian, right? Russia has occupied my country's territory and it's personal for me. If I have to fight him, I have 2 choices: win against him, or if I lose, I gotta kill myself." This extreme statement underscores the profound weight he carries into the octagon, transforming a title defense into a matter of national honor. Looking beyond the Yan rematch, Dvalishvili's ambitions for 2026 are clear and characteristically aggressive. He expressed his desire to stay incredibly active, targeting a return as early as March and explicitly calling for a place on the landmark UFC event expected to be held at the White House. This drive for a relentless schedule highlights his moniker, The Machine, is more than just a nickname. It's an operational philosophy. The podcast also gave Dvalishvili a platform to address a simmering feud with his former opponent, Umar Nurmagomedov, whom he defeated in January. When the topic arose, Dvalishvili's dismissiveness was palpable. "What kind of man are you when somebody tweets for you? He called me a fake champion, and I'm done with him. Next question, please," he quipped, suggesting that Nurmagomedov relies on others to manage his social media feuds, and brushing off the Russian's claims as unworthy of his energy. This dismissal, however, stands in contrast to Nurmagomedov's own persistent campaign for a rematch. Following a dominant win over Mario Bautista, Umar declared he is coming for the belt, attributing his first loss to Dvalishvili to a broken hand suffered during the fight. While analyzing the upcoming Yan rematch, Nurmagomedov cautiously gave Yan a chance, stating, "I think yes, he's very good on these arms, and he has always, any fighter has a chance always. Just depends on how he will stop the takedowns." This sets the stage for a potentially explosive second chapter in their rivalry, provided Dvalishvili can navigate the fierce challenge that the vengeful Petr Yan represents first. In the aftermath of his dominant and decisive submission victory over the seasoned veteran Dan Hooker at UFC Qatar, a triumph that firmly re-established his status as the undeniable #1 contender in the UFC's Shark Tank lightweight division, Arman Tsarukyan has emerged with a newfound and unapologetic voice, using his platform to deliver blistering, unfiltered critiques of the divisional landscape and the fighters he believes are benefiting from hype over merit. This candid persona was on full display during a sprawling interview on Daniel Cormier's YouTube channel, where Tsarukyan, brimming with the confidence of a man who knows his next fight should be for the undisputed championship, launched a particularly scathing and meticulously reasoned takedown of two of the division's most talked about figures, the perennial action fighter Michael Chandler and the charismatic rising star Paddy Pimblett. The conversation, which naturally orbited around the swirling rumors of a potential title fight between the reigning king Ilia Topuria and the popular Pimblett, reached a critical juncture when Cormier offhandedly referenced Pimblett's own victory over Michael Chandler. This single comment served as a trigger for Tsarukyan, who seized the opportunity to dismantle the credibility of both men in one fell swoop, beginning with a cold, statistical evisceration of Chandler's resume. "No way at all," Tsarukyan responded, his tone dripping with dismissive certainty, before launching into a forensic breakdown of Chandler's UFC tenure. Okay, how many people destroyed Michael Chandler? He is 40 years old. He has 6 losses, 2 wins in the UFC, and he had like a 4-fight losing streak. "Chandler is nobody," he stated, reducing Chandler's exciting reputation to a simple and, in his view, damning record of failure at the highest level. Tsarukyan then delved deeper into his analysis, framing Chandler not as a legitimate elite competitor, but as a carefully crafted product of promotional machinery. UFC tried to make him Arturo Gatti. They wanted to do him like him a superstar, I don't know. But yeah, he showed good fights, but he isn't an elite fighter. There is levels, when you see, he argued, drawing a critical distinction between a fighter who provides entertainment and one who possesses the all-around skill set to consistently defeat the best in the world. For Tsarukyan, Chandler firmly resides in the former category, a thrilling brawler whose stylistic appeal has obscured a clear and demonstrated ceiling against the division's true A-list operators. This foundational belief that there are unbridgeable levels to the sport formed the bedrock of his even more vehemently dismissal of Paddy Pimblett's title credentials.
Tsarukyan's disdain for the idea of Pimblett as a top contender was so intense that he jokingly, yet with an underlying seriousness, threatened to terminate the interview entirely if Cormier dared to offer any praise for the baddie. He systematically expanded his argument beyond Chandler, listing a veritable who's who of lightweight and featherweight excellence, names like Charles Oliveira, Dan Hooker, Max Holloway, and the retired Dustin Poirier, as fighters he believed would effortlessly expose Pimblett and hand him a one-sided defeat. For Tsarukyan, a fighter who has gruelingly climbed the ranks against a murderer's row of opposition, the notion that Pimblett could leapfrog him and others for a title shot based on popularity and victories over lower-tier competition is not just frustrating, it is an affront to the very competitive integrity of the sport. His comments thus transcended mere trash talk, transforming into a pointed critique of a modern MMA ecosystem where marketability and a loud persona can sometimes appear to be valued more highly than a proven track record against the world's best.